like to thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. It's really a pleasure that I have to be able to meet with clients. I know you did do a 24-hour dietary recall with me previously, but just if you want to tell me a little bit more about yourself, maybe some things you think that I should know that maybe weren't on the recall or where you just want to reiterate, really anything that you think is important.
Sure. So I'm 57 years old. I live in LaGrange. I work full time. My job is basically at a desk, but I do travel for work. So I'm traveling to see clients on a regular basis and also going to our corporate office. I have one child. I'm married. I have a dog, so I get to walk my dog as my exercise. And I guess that's about it in terms of about myself. Is there anything else you want to know?
Not that comes to mind, but I'm kind of hearing that, you have pretty much a stagnant lifestyle, maybe most days of the week. While you are traveling some weeks, you're doing kind of the same thing every day in terms of maybe what you're eating, exercise regimen, stuff like that. So it could potentially be difficult being out of town and making these changes. So that's definitely a barrier that we can work on together, hopefully finding some resolve to that. So, as I mentioned previously, you did do a 24-hour dietary recall with me last session. Just kind of want to get your feedback on how you felt about that. Maybe you were fine during the session, but you went home and thought, oh, I was embarrassed I had to say I ate that, or, oh, that was a lot of X, Y, or Z. Kind of how were you feeling after we had that session?
So, overall, I felt pretty good about it. I was surprised that I remembered as much of what I ate the day before, kind of going through and the times I was able to, I guess because it was during a work day, I was able to better recall exactly what time I ate certain things because of my work schedule, and I knew what I was doing, so that made it easier. So I was surprised at how much I could recall. There were a couple things that I forgot. When you asked me, gee, these are some forgotten foods, there were a few things that we found. It's like, oh yeah, how could I have had grilled shrimp without cocktail sauce?
Right.
So that was interesting to think. I really need to really think about that if I'm going to continue to do this. And I did feel a little bad that day. I happened to have a handful of M&Ms. I'm like, oh, I wish I hadn't had that. I wouldn't have had to tell you that I had these peanut M&Ms in the middle of the day for a snack. But overall, I thought it was a pretty interesting experience. And I was surprised at how much I recalled from the day before.
Well, I'm just happy to hear that you didn't have any food shaming tendencies, if you will. I don't want you to feel, if we happen to do these kind of recalls or dietary journals in the future, that you feel ashamed by maybe what you've eaten.
No.
So just, if we identify that as a solution for you, maybe something that you want to work on, I don't want to have it turn into a negative feedback loop in terms of how you're feeling. Great. So kind of even before the recall, before you met me, how do you find yourself coming in to meet with the dietitian, and maybe what were your feelings about that? Because there may have been some preconceived notions. Food can be sometimes a touchy subject. Sometimes it is uncomfortable to talk about what you're eating or how you feel about what you're eating. So kind of how did you find yourself here, and how do you feel about it?
So I found myself here, the main reason is I went to my doctor for my annual physical.
Sure.
And so when I did that, he's like, oh, you're in that age group where you could start gaining some weight, and you're not really heavy, but maybe a little bit, you could stand to maybe lose a few pounds.
Sure.
So he recommended that I go on a Mediterranean diet. And he told me a little bit about it, but he didn't really explain what that meant and how I'd really have to make changes and what I would need to look for and how I could possibly incorporate that into my lifestyle with, being at home a lot, but then also traveling. So even though he had recommended that, he didn't give me a lot of information. So this meeting was interesting because I thought, well, I can bring that up, and then maybe eventually I can learn more about what is a Mediterranean diet. How could I, incorporate that into my everyday life? So that was one of the reasons that I wanted to meet with you and talk about it and understand what I can do to maybe change some of my habits to eat a little bit more healthy and reduce some of the bad things that I might be taking.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think it's important to kind of get all your facts straight, if you will, and understand what this diet might entail before you jump into it. It kind of sounds like that's something that you're looking to do through these sessions. That's great. So kind of maybe fishtailing off of that, what are some reasons that you think maybe you want to adopt this healthier lifestyle or this different diet that, 60, 70 years previously, you haven't been eating Mediterranean? So what, maybe there's a...
Well, my doctor's saying I should do it. One,
Obviously,
factor,
yeah,
saying,
absolutely.
okay, I should probably listen to my doctor because I also have a history, I don't have a personal history, but my family has a history of heart disease, high cholesterol, hypertension, and I think maybe having a diet that is more plant-based and, better for me is going to maybe reduce my risk of developing any of those diseases or conditions. Like I said, because it does run in my family, I want to reduce that. And again, as I'm getting older, more likely to run into those kinds of issues. So that is one factor. The other reason I think I want to do this, and I'm hoping that maybe it leads to maybe losing a few pounds, is my 40th high school reunion is coming up in the fall. So I have some time. So it's not till October. But of course, I want to be able to look my best and feel my best when I go back for that and see people that I haven't seen since my 30-year reunion. So I think that's the other personal motivating factor is looking good for that.
Seeing some people that you maybe haven't seen in a while, want to make sure that you kind of still look the same as you always have. You don't want them to, sounds like maybe just a little fun and games with your friends. Absolutely. So making this lifestyle change, changing up your diet can definitely be difficult. So how important is it for you to make this change and maybe be able to sustain it forever?
So I think pretty important. I don't know if I can give it like on a scale how important it is. I'd say it's pretty important because of, my health, family history of having these diseases, that I want to avoid that because I want to live longer.
Sure.
So I think that's highly motivating to say, I want to be around. I want to be around to see my daughter, get married or have kids or, see her grow up more would be really great. So if I could live longer because I have a better diet and I'm not getting any kind of chronic conditions and I'm not overweight, then that's very motivating. And I think that makes me want to really do this. And so it's pretty important to me to try to make this change.
Sounds like working through this, there's more than just the weight aspect of it. It's you want to be around to see these things, to be able to experience these things with your family. It's more than just, I want to lose 5-10 pounds in the immediate future. There's more of a long distance goal.
Right. I have a much longer term goal than just the short term, because you hear about people losing weight and then gaining it back and losing weight again. I don't want to be in that mode. I mean, a few pounds for the fall would be great. Sure. If I gained a couple back, it wouldn't be the worst thing. But I think it's just being healthier and not having any kind of chronic condition, so I can live longer and experience a lot more things.
Looking at it more of a marathon versus a sprint, if you will.
Exactly.
And I know you did say you don't know if you could put a number on it, but I'm going to kind of yank your arm a little bit here and say, can you put a number on it? On a scale of 1 to 10, what would that importance level be to you?
I guess I would give it probably maybe an 8. It's hard to say. I mean, should it be? Maybe it should be a 10. I feel like now I'm feeling like I should say it's a 10 because it's really important.
However.
But I think I'd probably say about an 8.
And okay, so 8 is pretty high considering maybe some other people would say 5 or 6. Why do you feel like it's that high? Why isn't it maybe a 7 or a 6 to you?
I think it's because when I'm talking about it and saying, I want to be here for to live longer, to see things that my daughter's going through and my family, other family members, that makes it have more importance than just, I just either want to lose weight or I want to look good, or, that weighs more heavily on me.
There's an ulterior motivation to it versus just the losing weight. So obviously it sounds like you kind of want to make a diet change, more or less. Is that kind of what you're looking to do in this session? I want to make sure that I'm catering to the conversation to where you want this to go. So just kind of reiterating maybe what you want your change to be.
So I want to move into this more of a Mediterranean diet, heavier in fish, and I think it's fruits and vegetables, and making sure I'm getting fiber and reducing, fatty foods and any kind of junk food, obviously, but even more the beef and chicken and those kinds of things I don't think are on this Mediterranean diet. So, because the doctor said that was a recommendation, that's a very healthy diet to be on, then I think that's why I want to make those changes, try to adhere to this kind of diet. I think from what I understand of it, from what little he could tell me, because as a physician, he doesn't have a lot of information necessarily. Sure. That it is sustainable. So it's not a fad diet. So I'm not doing Atkins or
paleo
one of these things where, I'm only going to eat bananas one day and then cucumbers the next day. And then, because those things are not sustainable. So I am looking to make this change in my diet that can be long term. It can be kind of forever. In as I go through life, as opposed to, like I said, a fad diet, which I can imagine anyone can adhere to those for very long.
So kind of maybe, again, fishing off of that, have you ever experienced a fad diet? Have you maybe done some kind of restrictive diet and you found that hasn't worked in the past, and that's why we're looking at a more broad diet, if you will?
Right.
Is there a reason that you're so...
Really, way back I was in high school, so you know how far back that is. I've been graduated 40 years.
Sure.
My track coach suggested that I go on, I don't think it had a name at the time, but it was the, high protein, low carb diet. So I think that's kind of Atkins-like. But anyway, had recommended doing that. And I was like 16 or 17. I was like, what? Why would I be doing this? I don't recall really adhering to it or having any real results from that. But that was like so many years ago. But more recently, I did this 21-day sugar detox.
Okay.
So I went to a health fair at my the local Y that I belong to as my gym. And they had somebody there talking about how sugar is evil and that's what makes you gain weight. It's not fat, it's not carbs, it's sugar. And so to really reduce your sugar intake. So I did this 21-day sugar detox, which I kind of consider a fad because it was just for a period of time, 21 days. And it was kind of hard, and it was challenging, but I made it through it. I did lose weight, which was exciting.
Right.
So that was great, but I felt like it was, again, something I couldn't sustain because I couldn't have a lot of fruit. And to me, I love fruit. I want to have fruit, and especially when it's in the summer and it's fresh and you can get fresh things. So really reducing my fruit intake was not something I was interested in doing long term. I did change a few habits, so that was good. But it made me realize that I don't really want to do a fad thing again because it is just that. It's just a short period of time. I'm going to revert back to, some things that, in this case, eating more fruit wasn't a bad thing, but I don't think I'd be able to stay on something that was so restrictive. But I did, like I said, make a few changes. So I don't drink any soda anymore. So I feel like I have it within me to make changes that are long-term. So that's why I'm hoping that trying to understand and figure out how I can adhere to a Mediterranean diet, I could do in the long term. So I know that was a long answer to your question.
Oh,
have I done a fad diet?
No, I really appreciate it. No, it's totally fine. So again, it kind of sounds like maybe you're looking something that's more long-term. Seems like maybe the goal of this whole meeting would be just to find a longer-term solution. And I know you spoke about it a little bit, but can you just tell me it sounded like it was very restrictive. How restrictive was the sugar detox, and that's what you might have called it? What could you eat, or what was were there levels to it? I mean, how?
Yes, so there were certain levels. I don't remember them right now.
No, I mean,
but there were certain levels that was
a broad.
So, but there were very little fruit. Only certain fruits. I could have a banana, a grapefruit, or a green apple, one per day.
Okay.
Virtually no carbohydrates, so it made me really, really tired.
Sure.
So I didn't have any carbohydrates. So there, no bagels for breakfast, no sandwiches for lunch, no pasta, no rice.
Probably what your diet was.
Right. So I had to completely cut all of that out. Obviously, no sweets.
Oh,
yeah. Well, no alcohol either. No alcohol either. But no sweets, no candy, no cookies, no
ice cream.
Oh, yeah. So that was kind of hard. So but you'd be hungry all the time.
Right. Well, because the carbs are going to fill you up. Mm-hmm.
So not having the carbs really, so it was pretty restrictive. And I think the hardest thing was the no fruit and the no carbs. I mean, lowering my carbs, I think I can do, but not having any in my diet. I mean, really almost not. I mean, you could have some. If you worked and if you exercised, you could have more because you were, working out and burning it or whatever.
And you maybe needed that energy to be able to do that
Exactly.
Sure.
So, but the first few days, I was so tired. I did sleep pretty well because you'd be so tired. But I didn't like the lack of energy feeling.
Yeah, I mean, that's really difficult to get accustomed to, it sounded like, for you, and definitely not something that you wanted to sustain long term.
Correct. Right. Don't want to do that.
So, kind of segueing into my next question, how is what you're doing currently? It sounds like you've done fad diets. It sounds like you've maybe tried to do restrictive type diets as well. Didn't work for you. How is what you're doing right now not really working for you? Are you finding things in your diet that you're not liking that maybe also brought you to this Mediterranean diet other than your doctor saying something, or really just... him bringing it to the forefront of your
memory. I think it's just him bringing it up. And I think right now, even though the sugar detox helped me think about certain things, I focus a lot on sugar. So like looking at my yogurts that I'm eating and how much sugar is, in different items that I would normally eat that I still think are healthy. Having a yogurt is not unhealthy, but trying to see how much sugar or in cereals or granola, looking at that. But I already forgot your question.
What you're doing,
what am I doing now is not working.
Right.
I'm not really, I don't really think about what am I eating and is it following, a more Mediterranean, is it more plant-based and those kinds of things. I just kind of, my husband does most of the cooking. He does, some of the grocery shopping, not all of it, but what he wants to eat is different. So that's going to be a challenge. And if I don't eat as much meat or as many things that like he likes to have and what he traditionally has cooked, that's going to be a little bit difficult. So right now I found like what he wants to make, or I know what he can make. So if I go to the store to get something, I'll buy X, Y, and Z. And then you can make, you made in the past, you can make that chili, or you can make, whatever it might
Italian
be.
sausages, or mac and cheese and a ham slice, or
So those, I think that's right now what's not working is that I'm not planning enough ahead and thinking about what do we need to, what recipes should we be looking at, what things we need to get at the grocery store, how do we do our meals, how can we plan our meals more effectively to follow the diet.
From maybe just reflecting what I've heard here, it sounds like your husband may be the gatekeeper in your family. He tends to make all the meals. He might buy some of the food, but it also sounds like even if you're going to go out and be the gatekeeper, as we like to say, and buy the food for the family, you're still going to cater to things that he would do.
That's basically what I'm saying. That's
okay.
I mean, right now, and maybe that's something I'll have to work on. How do I change that? The good thing, for breakfast and lunch, I have a lot of control because we don't eat those together.
Okay.
So during the week, on the weekends, breakfast and lunch, I'm kind of on my own, so I could, eat what I want and plan those meals to what will work for me in this Mediterranean diet. But the dinners are the challenging part where, he's more controlling of what we're going to eat just because he's the cook and I really can't cook. So it makes it hard for me to say, oh dear, like we're not going to have that. We're going to have this and I'll make it. And be like, what? No, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like maybe one of your barriers is having your husband doing a lot of the preparation. Another barrier might be not being able to make the food for yourself or not having the means to do that in some cases. And then potentially... it was on the tip of my tongue, and now I can't think of it. It'll come back to me. But just whatever other barriers maybe you're identifying for yourself, or maybe if I can think of what I was thinking of.
Well, you kind of mentioned something before. We talked about my travel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing is when I'm traveling, you eat out. I mean, you don't have the opportunity. You're not cooking it. You're staying in a hotel room. I'm not gone for extended periods of time. Usually I fly out one day. I'm at, stay overnight, go to the meeting, and come home the next day. So, but you are eating out for most of the meals because I'm not going to skip a meal because I don't like doing that. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to then kind of control what you're eating when you're traveling like that and on the road. So that can be, I think, will be a bit of a barrier to the Mediterranean diet. I got to say, I did the sugar detox when I was traveling, and it was hard though because a lot of meals I didn't, can I have, I'd like, this entree, but I can't have the potato, I can't have the rice, or, going to an Italian restaurant, it's like, all right, like, what do you have there? I can't have any of the pasta.
Yeah.
So I've kind of experienced it, and so I know that's going to be a challenge and a bit of a barrier to adhering to this diet.
Well, I mean, I've been even thinking about it just now, hearing you say traveling, thinking about what you see at a typical hotel breakfast. Maybe it'll be cereal and waffles and a bagel, and maybe if you're really lucky they have scrambled eggs, which it sounds like you could have on the sugar detox, but I mean, your option, you can't even have, unless you have your one banana or one grapefruit or one apple for breakfast that morning.
That's right.
You don't really have a ton of great options unless you're staying at maybe a fancier hotel. You're going to go out to breakfast. You don't really have a ton of options in that buffet. Right. Also thinking about if you plan on hopefully making this change and how you're going to overcome these barriers, having to pick different restaurants and maybe going against what some other person wants to go to, that can be kind of uncomfortable. I've thought of my other barrier, potentially having to tell your husband, I don't want to, I'm not going to eat that, and then maybe his feeling gets hurt, maybe he gets upset by that.
Right.
thinking about how to mediate those situations where you're not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but you're also kind of trying to change your diet, and that can be difficult when you are eating with other people, when you are trying to make meals with someone else who's also not changing their diet.
The chances of him changing to this are probably pretty
Oh.
small, but
I mean, that was going to be my next question, is if you think that he might make this change with you, if he sees you eating like this, maybe if your daughter makes a change, you could all do it together. I don't know what.
Right, so that's possible. And again, as I learn more about what you can have on this diet and what's incorporated into it, I could see him moving somewhat there. And if there are things that he wants to have, and I just don't eat that part of the meal, and I supplement it with something else. But we do eat dinner together when I'm home. We do eat dinner together every night. So he might make some slight changes. I don't see him wholesale moving over to the diet. But again, once I learn more about exactly what you can, and I don't think it's as restrictive. You can never have this, and you only can have that.
Right.
So it's not going to be like the sugar detax. I think it's going to be more, here are the better choices. Here, you should have more of this type of food and less of these types of food. And so I think he could work with me, and we could work together to eliminate how much I have of certain things that he might be making that are not recommended on that diet, or recommended to have in smaller portions, things like that. And then again, controlling my breakfasts and lunches myself. So I think the home part might be a little bit easier to overcome than the travel part, because you're right. I go out to dinner with other people, and you have to kind of negotiate or work with them to say, well, what about this place? Or what about that place? So a woman I work with, she wants to go to Mexican restaurants every time we go out of town together.
Sure.
And I love Mexican food, but I'm like, will I be able to have something like that? And what could I have at those restaurants that might be following this healthier diet? Because I'm sure, refried beans aren't necessarily...
Might not be on the diet. Yeah, of
be
course.
Incorporated into that.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're definitely identifying and analyzing a lot of aspects of this behavior change, which I really like to see. When meeting with someone, it sounds like you're really willing and able to make this change, which is beautiful. I really like that. What are some things you think you could do to start making this change now? Because since we've kind of identified these barriers, maybe a little bit have delved into how you might change them. Mm-hmm. What do you, what are you thinking in terms of these changes?
All right. So I have a few things that I've thought of. So one is, like I said, planning out meals more ahead of time. Not that we don't plan meals now, but I think looking at what kinds of foods I should be eating and trying to find recipes. My husband belongs to this group, epicurious.com. You can find a lot of recipes. So looking through that, finding recipes that fall into more of these guidelines, and then doing a bit better of planning, because you do kind of fall back on, what are we going to have tonight? Oh, let's just put some burgers on the grill and have some French fries or something.
Sure.
So, I think planning further ahead, checking out the recipes ahead of time, getting, preparing the list for the store, having those kinds of things. And just having, like I said, I'm pretty confident fruits and vegetables are pretty high. It's more of a plant-based diet. So, having more accessible, buying fruits and vegetables in like the baby carrots, or, cutting them up or preparing it so that when I go and say, I want a snack, I'm not going to reach for, the candy bar that's sitting there that's easy to eat, but there's, already grapes, or there's already cut up, peppers or something like that. So I think planning ahead will help. I think, again, the same thing with traveling. Now, sometimes I travel by myself, so looking for restaurants, going online and searching for restaurants and looking at their menus before I go to see that there are options that would, meet what I want to do in my diet. So I think it's going to take more time, prep time and planning time. But I think those are some of the things I could start doing to start making that change. And then the last thing, maybe just kind of documenting or keeping some kind of track of how successful am I? How is this working? What am I really eating? Because the 24-hour food recall was pretty interesting, because I started thinking, did I really have fruits and vegetables, or did I have enough protein, or did I eat a lot of junk food? And so, because I don't think you are aware of it as you go through the day necessarily. And so I think writing it down, keeping track of what I'm eating day to day, I could see, I really was deficient in X or Y, and just would make me more aware, and then help me plan and keep modifying and changing the plan for what do I want to shop for next week or the week after.
Right. So
Does
it
that make
sounds like,
sense?
yes, absolutely. It sounds like maybe we're looking into working more with your husband as a team in terms of meals. Maybe more of a team approach, saying, here, I found some things that maybe we can have this week. How do you feel about this? Are there things that you would add, modify?
That would be, that's a
Working-
great suggestion, though, to like work with him
Working
as opposed
together.
to going and saying, you need to look and find these recipes, or you need to make this, but really trying to work
Really
together.
trying to
That's a great
find, right,
suggestion.
really trying to find a balance that works for both of you. To say, if you can make the fish, or you can make the salmon, I can make maybe the asparagus, or I can make the rice, or I can, trying to find a balance of what your skills are in the kitchen as well as what he can do, and working together versus just going and saying, here's what I'd like, please make,
Yeah.
and I don't know if that's
Right.
how it works now, but hopefully maybe finding a balance with that. It also kind of sounds like when you're traveling, planning out some places to go, maybe talking to others and saying, where are you looking at, and then being able to go online and say, well, what's the best option? Because like you said, the Mediterranean diet, just like any diet, doesn't have to be 100% all the time. If you're going to go to a Mexican restaurant and you can't find something that's perfect on the diet, maybe you just can find the next best thing.
Right. Right.
Looking at things like that, you don't have to be completely rigid with it. And then, what was I can't remember what your last suggestion was. I'm so sorry.
Plan. No, I think those.
The
food
food
room.
yeah, the food recall. Yes.
I'm saying so much and I'm talking so fast.
Oh,
so
no.
I apologize.
No, I was thinking about trying to go through maybe what you're logicking out in your head. So maybe looking at a food recall or some kind of food diary, food journal that you can, if you have time at the end of the day, and maybe we start off 3 days a week, or you don't have to do it every single day because sometimes you'll get into bed, it'll be 10:30, and you're like, well, I don't want to write down everything, I just want to go to sleep, and so trying to maybe mediate in the beginning how long it's going to take to kind of get on your feet in terms of the food recall, and see if that is something that you're interested in doing, because it doesn't work for everyone, but if it works for you and you have the time and the means to do it, then it motivates you, that's all we're really looking for.
Okay, that's great.
So kind of talk about this change, maybe noodling through a little bit what it would look like. How heavily do you think this change is going to impact your life? How different do you think, maybe basing it off your recall or basing it off of just things that have come to mind that you've eaten very recently? How difficult is this going to be for you?
Yeah. Well, the food, I have to say, I thought the food recall, I was pleasantly surprised, except for the peanut M&Ms that I ate and the ice cream. I didn't mention that. But I was pleasantly surprised that I did have pretty healthy choices that I was making. So I don't know that it's going to be extremely difficult to make the change. I'm hoping with the help and coming back and getting more sessions and having more time to talk through it and talk about what struggles am I having as I start to actually implement.
Right.
But I don't know this is going to be extremely difficult because I don't feel like I have poor eating habits now. So I'm optimistic.
Optimistic at this point that going forward it won't be some huge drastic lifestyle change for you. Kind of sounds like that's the direction that we're going in. And then kind of my last wrap-up question, at least for this session, would be, how would changing this make your life easier, more enjoyable? How would this benefit you? In terms of maybe how you're feeling, how you're looking, just things like that.
So I'm hoping and thinking that maybe I'll just feel overall better, that I'll just feel healthier, I'll feel like I have more energy. I'm, hoping that just I'll be more energetic, and so I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be super hard. I don't know if it's going to, again, have this drastic change in how I view my life and myself and my happiness, but hopefully, like I said, it'll just make me feel better and give me more energy.
And that's really all you can look for in a diet, right? It's just to help you live your best life. So I just want to, again, thank you for coming and meeting with me today. It's really been a pleasure, and I appreciate you sharing all somewhat intimate details with me about your life and maybe, I don't want to say your struggles with your diet, but what you want to make better about your diet. So again, I just want to say thank you, and I really very much appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Well, thank you. It was fun.